Welcome back to the Horror Academic. And today, day 20 of my in-home reviews is Secret Window with Johnny Depp. Yeah, I really should have watched this sooner. It's been sitting on our shelves for years. I kind of forgot about it. Um, it's another one of those, missed it in the theater, so bought it when we saw a copy. And it's been sitting on the shelf, like I said. 2004, directed by David Cope, who was apparently the person who wrote Panic Room. So I'm not quite sure how that all runs up, but what is more important is it has an amazing cast. Just off the top here, we have obviously Johnny Depp, John Turturro, Timothy Hutton, Charles Dutton, a score by Philip Glass, and based on a short story by Stephen King. So these are all amazing things, and yeah, I should have watched this sooner. It's really good. It is from the short story that's in Four Past Midnight, Secret Windows, Secret Gardens, which is a great story that I highly recommend. Actually, I recommend this whole book. I recommend almost every short story or novella that Stephen King wrote, so that's all that is. But, yeah, it was one of those things where as soon as the movie started, I'm like, wait, I read this story already. I think I was holding off because I thought I hadn't read it, but I did. So, Johnny Depp plays an author of some sort of either crime or strange fiction kind of uh, the genre. We're not quite clear, but he's a successful author. And there's two main events that start off the film. The first is he catches his wife having an affair, and the second thing is someone knocks on his door to tell him that he has basically plagiarized a story that this man has already written. So it's kind of, he's hit on both ends of just this awful things going on in his life, and he's trying to deal with the fact that he's got to the point of, he's going through a divorce, splitting the property with his wife, or his ex-wife, and her boyfriend, and now he has this added threat of this imposing man who's got the, kind of like a southern kind of backwoods kind of style to him, and he's just very intimidating to someone like Depp, Mort as the character's name, Morty, um, who is very, New Englander. Um, he doesn't seem like the kind of guy who's ever gotten in a fight, let alone, had to deal with something like this. And the man who's threatening him leaves his story and says, "I'll be back in 2 days," and it becomes this kind of constant thing of, now he has to prove, I wrote this story before you did, and then the man slowly trying to torture him and all the people and things around him that he loves. So, everything amps up. Depp tries to rationalize, and then just tries to find a way to be safe, and all these things, just kind of bringing in people to try and help him without too much leaning on, because he's been warned, you can't go to the police, and everything just goes wrong every time he tries to say, well, okay, well, I'll just, I don't know, I'll just go get the story. I'll prove to you that it was published already because it has a date in it, and that's it. And you can say, you said you wrote it in '97. I had it published in '94. So it's this whole back and forth. And every time he goes to prove, something happens where it's not possible. So everything ramps up. It all takes place in this cabin that he owns in the middle of nowhere. And that's making it even worse because, it's just a landline kind of story. So, if he's not standing by his phone, he misses it. He has these, he's like an uncontrollable napper. I didn't know this was an issue people have, but he naps uncontrollably. So he's either napping or he's writing, dealing with his housekeeper and his dog, and he really has a sedimentary life. So this is far more confrontational than he'd ever want to be, and it's this guy is the total opposite of him that he has to now deal with. I don't want to compare it to too many other things because it would give away there's a great twist that if you haven't read the book is even bigger twist. So I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to, because there's a couple films I can think of that I want to relate it to, but I don't want to because that would be too close to the nose. But I will say it did in some ways remind me a little bit of another Stephen King story that I love that has a good movie adaptation, which is The Dark Half, which is a sort of, well, not quite the same. It's a man is haunted by a character that he creates, and that character doesn't like that he's been killed off. But the person who plays the writer and also the character is Timothy Hutton. And there's a great little tie-in here is that the man that his ex-wife is now with is Timothy Hutton. So that to me was a nice little kind of nod to Stephen King fans. And I think Depp is awesome in this role. He's believable. He's a little 90s-ish, you know. There were some kind of things. It was like, oh yeah, Depp's not like that anymore. But back then I could see that. It's just kind of, like I said, it's early 2000s, 2004. So it was right after, I think, the first Pirates of the Caribbean. But he's still, he's got short, bleach blonde hair in this, and the little goatee mustache combo. So it does kind of harken back to older, pre-Captain Jack, Johnny Depp roles. So I really enjoyed it. It was just a great, tight story. It gets you involved, the characters really well, the small town that they're in really well. You understand when he has to visit the kind of the businessy world of the city and go to New York to deal with like agents and agents that he not agents. I would say, yeah, there's like literary agents you can tell he has to deal with there. There's lawyers he has to deal with there. There's kind of like a private eye that he has to deal with there. So those are very like the kind of contrasty moments, going back and forth between his life in the city that he has to have as a published author and his reality every day of being this kind of secluded guy, especially now without his wife. Living in this cabin in the middle of nowhere in this itty bitty little town where everybody knows that he's the author, it's very, you kind of get settled into that environment really quickly. They do a great job of setting that tone. And, it's like every Stephen King novel or story about a writer, that there's definitely things in here that remind you of King and his personal story. Like there's this kind of, he's not a smoker. He says he's not a smoker anymore. He's not a smoker, but he stashes a cigarette every now and then. So, those kinds of things, like that, I could see that being very real to Stephen King, So those little details are always great and they build the character better. And I really just enjoyed the movie. And if you're a Stephen King fan, if you're a Johnny Depp fan, I highly recommend Secret Window. So it's a good way to end the week, right? So it's Friday, and I like to end on a positive note. I'm glad I saved Secret Window for last night. And, have a good weekend, guys. And I will see you next week on the Horror Academic.